Joining us tonight is Dodgers manager Dave Roberts. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Obviously, we have all seen the horrific video of George Floyd being killed in the streets in Minneapolis while in handcuffs and unarmed. We've seen the protests, some of the violence as well. What has been going through your mind these past 8 days?
Yeah, John, thanks for having me on. It's a lot. I think that my wife, my kids, we've had a lot of conversations, and obviously you're trying to stay as in tune with what's going on. But, you know, to put eyes on that situation and how he was murdered, I just can't get that visual out of my head, and nor should we. But I just think that for me, as a minority, as an African American, mixed race, man of color, my family, my father was the first African American in his high school and talked about civil rights, his civil rights movement, and serving our country for 30 years. And John, one of the things for me, I was telling my kids the other day is I apologize because my dad served our country, and you look back in the 60s, what Martin Luther King, what Jackie did for baseball and well beyond baseball. And it seems like we haven't gained any ground. And, here we are as parents and as a generation that's trying to lead the youth and have certain expectations, and we can't get it right or even make headway in the right direction. So it's just disappointing. And, so many times as we go through this, as we are going through this pandemic, and, people talk about, getting back to normalcy and getting back life to normal, and normal's not good enough. And clearly what we saw a few days ago, normal's not even close. We all got to be better. And, racism is happening daily. And so we all got to be aware of it and do our part.
It's amazing for you to say that you were apologizing to your kids. I feel like I should be the one apologizing and not you apologizing to your kids. I want to talk about that. When you were playing, Dave, I know social media, it wasn't at all what it is now, and we all realize what a cesspool of negativity it can be at times, but it can also be a great vehicle to deliver strong and powerful messages for influential people like professional athletes in times like this. When you see guys like Mookie Betts and Justin Turner and other players on your roster, and you see so many high-profile professional athletes, current and former, using their platform to preach unity, to preach hope, or to demand justice and change, I think it's been really powerful and inspiring and uplifting during such a sad and upsetting time recently.
Absolutely. And, those guys that you mentioned, they're in a class, in an elite class of human beings and men that really are unselfish. And I just love the idea of being uncomfortable. And I think that our country is afraid of those difficult conversations. And John, there's a big difference, in my opinion, in being educated and not being ignorant. And I think that they just don't work hand in hand. If you're educated, then you're not ignorant. And I think that, turning a blind eye to something that is apparent in our culture, in our country, shows ignorance. And I think that, the leaders in our country that have the opportunity to promote change and to make a difference really have to have that ear. And, the reason people, protest and rise up is because they want to be heard. And I think that as any great leader has to be a great listener. And so, as you mentioned, our guys who are using social media for the right way and as a platform, so I applaud them.
Well, Los Angeles, David, is like so many cities all across this country. We've had protests here taking place around L.A. County. Last couple days, we've had a curfew, a 5 p.m. curfew yesterday, another curfew once again tonight, because there has been some violence and some looting. And I know Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, a riot is the language of the unheard. But do you worry a little bit about some violent acts out there taking some of the focus off of what is a very important message that the protesters are expressing?
I do. And I think the thing that we have to really be mindful of is, yes, the byproduct of what happened with Mr. Floyd are the riots and the looting, but we can't we have to understand the cause of this and the acting out. And also, and I'm not as educated as I probably should be, but a lot of these people that are protesting, had intentions of, you know, being nonviolent, and there were people from outside of their areas and different states, and actually some people with different motives
Yeah.
to kind of spark a conflict or an uprising, which really wasn't with the right spirit. And as a result, you know, you're getting this narrative of what happened and the focus being on the rioting. And to be quite honest, is that these protesters didn't have those intentions. And now you look at these local businesses and companies that are trying to, survive a pandemic, and then to try to open their doors and then to be looted and to be, affected like that. It's very saddening. And the irony is that these people, for the most part, I would guess, have the same interests. Their interests are aligned. So it's just a sad time in our country, and these conversations right here need to be had.
Yeah, it is a very sad time. And one thing I think we can all agree on, Dave, is that change is long overdue. And it's one thing for people to post their thoughts on social media, to say all of the right things, but now it's about doing the right things. I think we can all agree about that. So for true change to happen in this country, Dave, where do you think it has to begin? And that's probably not an easy question to answer.
Well, it's at the core, and I think that this is each individual person. My wife is white. We've been together for, gosh, since I was 15 years old, and for her to be a white American and to acknowledge privilege and to not apologize for who she is as a person and the color of her skin, but to look inward and to see that there is privilege to it, and there's benefits where she might get pulled over and has gotten pulled over and gotten out of way of things and hasn't been in harm's way, or no one's crossed the street because she's walking, or gotten out of an elevator because she got into the elevator. So these things are real. And I think for people to really look long and hard and say, this is a reality, I think we have a chance. But to kind of, you do things on social media and to write a statement and to say the right rhetoric, if you don't look more internal, it's not going to change.
Yeah, because we've seen protests before and nothing seems to get done. In fact, in 2014, it was Eric Garner who said, "I can't breathe." He said it 11 times while he was lying face down on a sidewalk in New York City with an officer's arm wrapped around his neck. And that led to all the NBA players. They were wearing their "I Can't Breathe" T-shirts before games. There's been Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin. Just this year, we've had Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and of course now George Floyd. Dave, it's a centuries-old problem in this country, and nothing seems to be getting done. As we sit here today, though, it feels like maybe this time it is going to be different. Am I wrong? Do you feel that this could be the start of maybe some kind of positive movement?
I do. And John, you know me, I'm very positive, very hopeful. And this is just not, it's not a storyline. I mean, the reality is this is our culture. This is what we live in every single day. And for us to acknowledge that, it's a start. But I do think that people coming together, but it's again, this back to normal thing, we got to be better. And I think that this is going to spur something that I hope and pray that my kids, as they become parents, can look back at this point in time of George Floyd, this pandemic, 2020 can be looked back at a time of change and not a time of really sorrow and sadness.
Last thing for you, Dave. What can you say to me or to other people out there? What can I do? What can we all do to help create change here in our country?
I love you for saying that, for asking the question. And I just think that just opening your heart, your mind, really hearing and feeling people of color, what they go through. And it's real. No one's looking for a handout, but people just want to be heard, man. And I appreciate you even asking that question.
Well, Dave, thank you so much. We appreciate you for joining us and talking about something that is a tremendously vital subject. And we really thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, John.